sword in your hand, Lord, to destroy strongholds, Lord, in the hearts. Oh, Lord, let her be your vessel today. Let her be your vessel today. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen.
Wow. What a platform to stand in, you guys. Truly, Jesus is exalted in this place. Just gonna stand in the moment. Because who has eyes like the eyes of our God? Who sees and knows and beholds everything upon the face of the earth. Who knows our innermost being, who loves us with an everlasting love. I don't know, I think there's lots of things going on in a busy room like this, but when I first walked in, you probably can't see it while you're sitting down, but lots of times in a church, there's the cross, or there's a banner, or there's something, isn't it, that sort of stands out when you first walk in the physical building. And what I saw here was this giant pen, and it just says, "Write on me." We are God's living letters. And that's what I pray for you today, that God will write his message on your heart. Amen. Where's Chris gone? He's not actually, okay. He's not actually here, but I wanted to thank him for that drum. When he brought that in worship last week, he led the service. And it was the first one that we've been to. And he opened up by saying, "It's a new season." And I totally believe that. In fact, more than a new season, I believe it's a new era. Not just for us, but for the whole world. And when Chris brought in that drum today, it just sounded like that, kind of the dirge, like that beat that ushered the Queen's body through the city to her final resting place. And she was an amazing woman, an extraordinary woman. And I think, she was a figurehead, wasn't she? And so in many ways, she was limited as to what she could say or what she could do. She could never really have an opinion or share an opinion as such, but she lived her message. And it came through powerfully at her funeral. Though a seed fall to the ground and die. What is it? Unless a seed falls to the ground and dies, it remains alone, remains one. But if it falls to the ground, it reproduces and it becomes many. Now, the media might not bring that forth, but for anyone who watched the actual funeral, and there were millions around the world, she spelled it out very, very clear. Like anyone else, she was a sinner, and she leaned on God to be her strength, and she understood that her authority was in him and for him. She served for him. And she was a young woman, kind of thrust into that position early, but truly she leaned on him, and she became a constant for many, whether they believe in the monarchy or not. I think everybody kind of respects who she really was and the way she lived her life. Anyways. Very, very timely for us personally to be here. It's an honor to stand in this place and back in this neighborhood. Because today, I guess I will share some of our story. You know, we overcome by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of our testimony. In Revelations, it says that the testimony of Jesus is the word of prophecy. And actually, often our lives are a prophetic picture. And if we choose to follow him, then our story is actually his story because he writes it through us. In fact, he's been writing the story from the beginning of time. It started back in the garden, didn't it? And it's not just for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's for them all. It's for every generation. And he builds. Not like the Old Testament passed away. Jesus is the fulfillment of the law, and he builds on everything that's gone before, and it becomes a foundation and a platform. It's a love story. And Jesus is coming again. And that's the good news. So I really, really did not want this day to be about me or about, but somehow he just kept prompting me to go back to our story and kind of walk through the foundation of coming here. And as a young girl, I found him. I started falling in love with him. And he really put in my heart to pray for my spouse, whoever that might be. And it just made sense to me, you know, that we're all created in his image. You can fall in love with a lot of people, but we're all different. And so there had to be a best. And I thought, God, you know me better than I know myself. I want your best. And I dared to trust him for it. I wasn't ready to get married. I didn't need a romance. You know what I mean? I just thought, you be my lover. You be my friend. I'm going to follow you with all that I am. And you bring the man for me. And he did that. And he took me in my quest to follow him. He took me halfway around the world to Singapore. And there I met his choice, his best for me. And he knew exactly what I needed. And ours was kind of out of the box. It was a divine romance. It was orchestrated in heaven. I can say that because he's so supernaturally confirmed and affirmed and provided supernatural, miraculous stuff all around the story of Isaac and Rebecca. And literally, Ian heard that when he was wanting to invite me, because we'd met in Singapore, but I was from Canada. He was from New Zealand. He was called to Asia. God was telling me to go back home. This is in an era where there's no phones, there's no FaceTime, there's no nothing. It's like the other side of the world is a long way away. And we had very short time together. Anyways, he was inviting me out to New Zealand to come and spend time so we could develop this relationship if that was a goer. And going, God, how can I invite her to spend her own money, come down to where I am? Isn't the man supposed to go to the girl? So that was the introduction into, like, is this even biblical? And God drops in Isaac and Rebecca. Because of course, Abraham's looking for a bride for his son, goes to her nation, sends the servant, sends the jewels, all this stuff. And sovereignly, it plays out. He's reading the story. He goes, oh, yeah, okay, that's good. Well, at least the girl came to the guy, right? So I can go ahead and invite her. But then the lady he's staying with, who's a brand new Christian, she wakes up in the night and God tells her to give him a whole bunch of jewelry. It's not for him, it's for me. And he's still writing to that girl in Canada. Then he has a friend who he's met out in the back blocks of nowhere with the tribal people he's ministering to. And this guy's saying, hey, are you still writing to that girl in Canada? Like, we're going up there on furlough, and I'm just wondering if there's anything you want us to take her. And God goes, there's your servant. And so it played out quite sovereignly, and God actually did bring us together. And that whole story became very, very precious to us. And we got this whole thing about marriage and God wanting, you know, how it's a picture of his heart, that he actually wants to be one with us. That we and the Father become one, just like he and the Father are one. And so, yeah, I felt like the luckiest girl in the world, honestly. There was a whole season, you know, we did many things. Like in marriage, we went through our ups and our downs. But we'd been, so 15 years ago, well into the journey, God starts talking about coming to London. London's calling, London's calling. We keep hearing it and hearing it over and over. And so we come. And we first end up in this beautiful house out in the country. We're kind of spying out the land. And on this amazing property, there's this statue. We kind of had like a formal garden, and there was a waterway and this long stretch of green grass with this lovely statue of a woman. She was picking grapes and gathering them in a huge basket. As soon as I saw it, I knew it looked to me, she was just the Shulamite woman. In Song of Songs, and God was speaking again, how he wanted to romance us, how he longs for intimacy, and how he would prune us, and how he wanted to make us fruitful, and you know how the little foxes can spoil the vine, and all those things rolled up into the story. Anyway, we got to be there for a whole year, and then we had sovereign intervention. We meet with an amazing couple. We live right here in Wandsworth. They have Miracle House. and God starts to usher us into London, which was the goal, right? London's calling. We were coming not just for us, but believing to meet a whole company of people. God is wanting to birth the fivefold, flat leadership. This had been percolating in the spirit since before I met him. Or before we got together, and it had been kind of a hallmark, you know, a thing that was in our lives at that point. As we came into Wandsworth 15 years ago, we'd been married for 20 years. And, you know, we had these 3 little kids with us. We're coming from New Zealand, and we have, you know, London's huge. We're just trusting God for a little green space where the kids can ride their bikes or something. And he positions us in this house right up on Wandsworth Common, in front of a big grassy area. And we pull up. Actually, the folks we were staying with out in the country were really excited, because when they looked at this house, they went, you know, the lady who lives like right next door. You know, she's amazing, and la, la, la. And, you know, we don't even have to go through the agent. Like, we'll call her and you could get a personal invite in, I'm sure. So sure enough, they do this, and the day comes, and we're finding our way through London. We pull into this drive, and as we jump out of the car, I look up at the house, and you know how they have these nameplates? You know what it's called? Rebecca House. I just went, see what it's called? Rebecca House. And God drops into his mind and says, that's right, and I'm looking for a bride for my son. And then it gets even more extraordinary, because this lady who lived next door, she lived at Fountain House. She did this lovely welcome. I remember her writing this beautiful card, like Rebecca could come over and water her camels anytime she likes. And I was thinking, God, only you. And then it goes deeper, because her house, so we're on a corner house, but she is on the edge of a square of houses. Okay, and her place leads into a secret garden, which is actually like 2.5 acres within the city. And she called her house Fountain House because there's this fountain, literally like quite a large fountain in the backyard, and she's planted roses all around it. And the name of those roses is Bride. Rebecca House was called Rebecca because there literally was like a 4-foot statue of her in the backyard, this figurine. I just thought, Lord, you're amazing. And I was smart enough to connect all the dots and get the picture, which was extraordinary, about how, even though Rebecca House, that was sovereign enough for me, that was pretty exciting. But then we can only go into that secret place through our friend, Jesus. We only come through by the blood of the Lamb and enter into the gate, into that Holy of Holies we were singing about through him. And so many things started to play out in that time. My mom came for a visit. I remember her coming for a holiday, and that was all exciting. She'd never been to England before, but her parents were from here. And then I got sick. It's like, and she spent almost the whole holiday. Actually, we all got sick because it was just new being in London, new strain of whatever. And she was such a blessing because she just waited on me and cared for me. And, I knew nobody here. Ian was itinerating, and I was just trying to feel my way in the midst of everything. And then Jill Austin came. I don't know if any of you have heard of her, but she was like a spiritual mom for us. And that was amazing. We hadn't seen her in a whole bunch of years. And she came, and she was looking for a home in God. And she was talking, we were talking about, would she come? Would she settle? Could she be a part? Now that would have been phenomenal. That was something that, we were so excited for. And then she came and she ministered within the group of people we were meeting with, fellowship with her. And within 4 months, both her and my stepmom, long story within the form, but I've got my natural mom, then I had an aunt who was like a stepmom, and both of them died. Jill, quite shockingly, my aunt had been struggling with cancer. But I was suddenly going home for a funeral out of nowhere. It was extraordinary. It's one of those times when you just walk into this picture again, because here I am. I'm from Canada. I haven't been back home in a long time. In fact, I no longer travel on a Canadian passport because I've been living in New Zealand. I've got little Kiwi kids, and it just made a lot more sense for us to be all on New Zealand passports. So here I come, flying into Canada. There's still something about your roots and where you grew up. This is like home for me. I'm going back into, okay, so it's my stepmom, that's really my aunt, but my uncle is really like my greatest father figure on us. So I'm going back to the Father's house in my own land. I'm looking out over the city, and I get off the plane, and the airport is just chock full. And of course, all the Canadians just cruise through customs. But there I am, standing in this mega long line with all the foreigners trying to go home. And I just got it. Like, this is not really home. This is not where I belong. We're just sojourners passing through this life. Abraham knew that one. And then I get to my father's house, and of course everybody's excited to see us, and there's the sorrow around why I was there. And my cousin says to me, You won't mind sleeping in your bed, Mom just died in you. And I'm like, no, of course not really. So I go back into what was her bedroom that's been all, it was all changed when she was a girl. And it's all kind of swept clean, carpet removed, because it had become a bit of a hospital at home. And I crawl into this bed at night. And it was the weird, I just lived, I got the message. It was like this graphic picture underlined about 6 times. We need to die. So gotta lose your life to find it. My life is not my own. Okay, Lord. I'm yours. Thank you that I get to be here. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. And I started getting downloads of stuff, like, for me, and for the family, and for what was going on. And then overnight, it snowed. And snow is so amazing. I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but it's almost it's like silent. It just floats down and it carpets everything. And there's just this kind of calm about it when you look out over the white. And I got that too. Though our sins are red as scarlet, makes us white as snow. It's his righteousness. It's nothing of our own that we could ever do, that we could ever say, that we could ever, we are holy because he is holy. As he chooses to make us holy when we will surrender and let go. Phenomenal. Phenomenal. So coming back here today, it's like, wow, now the Queen has just died. Okay, so my mother in the natural came, my spiritual mom died, my stepmom died. That was all here in Wandsworth when we first came. Now, 14 years later, numbers have significant, okay. We keep hearing about Mother Earth, right? All the time, Mother Earth, Mother Earth. That's okay. I don't care if we personify it. We personify a ship or whatever. But you know what? This earth is a speck in our universe that God the Father holds in his hand. I mean, come on. He knows every detail of our lives. He knows every thought. He knows every hair on our head. He wants to position us, and he wants to empower us, and he wants us to rule and reign with him. And the spirit realms that he is Lord of are 10 times more real than death. Do we know who we are? Do we know who he's called us to be? Do we have any idea? I don't think so. I don't think I did for a very long time. But though we are weak, he is strong. He is strong, and nothing can separate from his love. Not height, not depth, not principality, power. He will have his way, but will we be part of it? That's up to us. That's the key. He always gives us free will. He always gives us choice. And the sad thing is that most of us, or this world, choose to break his heart every day. We spit in his face, we mock him out, we think we know better, and in our arrogance, we are in one hell of a mess. Put it bluntly. Same. Anyways, I'm going to carry on in our journey, because that was Wandsworth. We lived in Rebecca House for 3 years. I had been so excited. Okay, we were believing God. We'd kind of lost some of our earthly father's inheritance, and we just knew that we were like trusting God, that a heavenly Father's inheritance, which is worth far more, right? And that's what we were working and laying our lives down for. But when we moved into Rebecca House, I thought, wow, maybe this is it. Like, God's going to bring the, you know what I mean? Like, maybe this will be our house one day and whatever. Like, I loved it so much. It felt like he sovereignly gave to it. And then 3 months in, she's going to put up the rent and it's time to move. I'm thinking, what? God, what was that all about? I'm looking out the window at Rebecca and I'm just thinking, I don't get it. Like, Rebecca, after I'd lived there about 2 or 2.5 years, found out that it wasn't just a statue, it was a fountain. And like the water, it was broken, but the water was supposed to come up through and trickle out of her urns and whatever. And so my dream was always like, I want to see that working again, right? And we actually lived, the only reason we got to live in such a big, beautiful house was because the landlady lived with us. That's a story in itself. But she was from another culture as well. She had idols stored in the locked room that we never went into. You know, and I was trusting that she'd get saved and God would clean out the idols and, you know, all this stuff would be sorted, right? But as I'm looking out the window, I realized, like, it's actually not about Rebecca, right? Go back to the story in the Bible. Rebecca left her house. It was much more about Isaac, who's a type of Christ. It's not about me. It's about him, right? So suddenly got excited. Okay, God, so what have you got next, right? And we were praying as a family. And from there, he led us to the other side of Kingston Vale, kind of over by Richmond Park, into a house on Grassmere Ave. And this was a wide, open space, much lighter, much freer. In fact, when we went to view it, the agent was just kind of showing us what was on their books and all apologetics, saying, I'm sorry, we can't get in today because we don't have a key. And as we walked around the back of the house, Ian just kind of instinctively turned the doorknob and it was open. And so we just walked on in, and here it was. It felt like open heaven because we've kind of been under the control of the landlady in the house, and it was a beautiful place, but it was starting to feel a bit closed in downstairs and dark, and suddenly God's flinging wide another gate in the spirit, and we made this move, and we had great years there. And yeah, interesting. Sean came in those years. He came to a little connect group I ran just before we moved out of Rebecca House, and she made the transition with us over to Grassmere, which was a mega long commute. And she paid a high sacrifice to do that once a week and be part of the group. And then God called her back to China on her personal quest. So that's her story to tell. Anyways, from there, God took us to Broadway Road. And again, we'd been there coming up to 3 years, and we just felt that it was time to move, and we'd gone searching, looking for places. Came upon this one house, and I was growing and learning to hear God, learning to see in the spirit. Came to this place that I just loved the house. Like, it just looked amazing. We were kind of looking through. No, we got shown through it. But anyways, as we were by the front door, they had this big old lantern at the top. And I saw, this was a kind of first for me, more to see a vision where I saw Jesus, like the guy who's, in the painting where he stands at the door and knocks. It was like that. And then he took down the lantern and he turned and he beckoned us in. And then as I around the side of the house. Here's Rebecca again. I don't know that it wasn't really named Rebecca this time, but instantly I saw that's who she was to me. She had her urn. She was much older. She was much smaller. Her head had actually been decapitated and put back on. And all of those things spoke something to me. I thought it was amazing. And I was convinced, okay, this is our house. And then we all prayed. And Ian and Helen, it was like, no, it's not time. And I'm like, what? Really? Come on, God, what was that all about? You know what I mean? Like, whoa, why did you show me all that then? It's like, okay, I guess, you know what I mean? I trust you, and I was outnumbered anyways. So it was like, no, okay, so we won't move. We'd just been looking, right? Because we felt a move was coming. Anyway, 6 months later, the rent was going up again, and we needed to move. And out of the blue, we get a call from that agent 6 months later going, hey, remember that house you saw? Like, are you still interested? Now, when we went back, I had thought it was all great. I'd seen all those things in the spirit, but it actually had no dishwasher. We needed a lot of storage, and there was a whole garage at the end of the property, but it had been locked. And although it was there, they said that we couldn't have access to it, which was kind of a big negative. Anyways, this time when he rang us back, they'd resurfaced all the counters in the kitchen. They put in a dishwasher, and we now had the key to unlock the garage and could use it for our storage. I was like, okay, God, you are extraordinary. Yes, I'm here, but it's all about timing, isn't it? In his time. Anyways. Kind of share that just because it feels extraordinary. Again, coming to see, unless a seed falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. If it dies, it produces many. Again, I just kind of moved by what's going on right now with the Queen and the timing of, we've been gone for 5 years again. Now we plan this trip back, and just somehow right in the, actually cool that it spanned the realms. We're still in New Zealand when she died. I think we literally flew in on the day she died. She didn't kill the Queen. She'd already died en route. But it's like this seamless thing. But I believe a new thing God wants to do. Anyways, we got to walk back the route that her body was going to go. So he took us down, and it's been quite profound to hear and see and think about her life and what she stood for. Because she was truly a surrendered life. They were quoting in the thing about, position and power, and so many people are in it for themselves. Their own power, their own authority, but hers was so submitted under God. She was truly obedient and dedicated to him, and understood that, yes, she was there, but he had put her there. And Sean was talking about meekness and humility, and I read a thing out of her, how I said that maybe the message of her death was the strongest thing she ever got to convey verbally out of her own mouth. And one of the little experts those excerpts that was read, it says, we meekly beseech thee, O Father, raise from the death of sin unto the life of righteousness, that we shall depart this life, we may rest in him, as our hope is, his sister doth. And that at the general resurrection on the last day, we may be found acceptable in thy sight. Receive that blessing which thy beloved Son shall pronounce to all that love and fear thee, saying, come, ye blessed children of my Father, receive the kingdom prepared for you from the beginning of the world. And in that, she kind of humbled herself. It's like that was her position before God, you know? She knew who he called her to be, and she just lived it out before him. And that's all he asks of any of us. And somehow the playing field all gets was she might have been queen of this world or realms of it. And she had all the riches and she had whatever. She knew. Well, how much of it is she taking with her now? None of it. None of it goes through. Suddenly, she, like us, is just one of God's kids in the heavenly realm. And the truth of what she hooked into and what she knew is for any whosoever will may come. And we can all follow in that example and fulfill the call that God has on our lives. Anyways, people look to her for all kinds of reasons, right? She was thrust into her position unexpectedly at such an early age. A young woman in a man's world. It's interesting. One of the things we watched, she said, my first prime minister, said to me that the importance of history is what he was saying. Often we need to look back into history in order to see ahead. And that's kind of why I felt to share my story today, because God sovereignly brought us here for a purpose, and God sovereignly maneuvered us and positioned us through all those places over those years. But that's not a lot. And we went away, but God sovereignly called you guys, and you're obeying your call and forming something very precious again, that is his seed multiplied. That's not us. And anyways, that's a little aside. But yeah, Elizabeth was awesome. I kind of hear them saying, the truth is she was positioned above her husband and every other man in this land. And it's so many other countries around the world. But she understood that God was her authority and her position was under him. And after that, she knew it was her husband. So she held the position on the global front because she was queen. But very much said in documentary that she also honored and respected her husband. That despite being one of the first leading working women in society, she very much looked to Prince Philip to lead and be head of their home, submitting herself under his leadership when it came to their family. That came out really clear in a documentary that I watched, and I thought, man, that's powerful. That's God's heart. Again, it's not a matter of value according to the position we hold, is it? But there is function and there is structure. We got God the Father, Jesus the Son, and Holy Spirit. Jesus only did what he heard the Father say. Function, he said he didn't consider it to be equal with God. Yet God raises him and glorifies him in the highest place and makes it, it's a mutual respect. It's mutual love and authority and Holy Spirit within that. Holy Spirit glorifies Jesus. Jesus glorifies the Father. Father glorifies the Son. See, there is structure, there is order, there is position, there is authority. But within that, love covers all, and flows freely. And we need to honor and know and respect what he set in place. Anyway, yeah, and Philip was a strong man in his own right, a leader, a commander, within the military, and she obviously loved him. He was a great strength. And I think when she could really personally, in the midst of everything else. Anyway, so watching her funeral was really quite something as well. And I just remember in the midst of it, Sophie said, "What's this thing about the Order of the Garter?" I don't know if any of you were watching it, but it kind of came up quite a few times. They're going, whatever, the Order of the Garter. And it caught my attention because I kind of wondered the same, but when Sophie said that, it kind of underlined it. So I looked it up and I was staggered by what I saw. Like again, I go, okay, Lord, you're speaking. Because I'll read the kind of quote. In medieval times, King Edward III, inspired by tales of King Arthur and the chivalry of the Knights of the Round Table, set up his own group of honorary knights called the Order of the Garter. Okay, so that's nearly 700 years ago. Now, knights can be both male and female. That's actually a change that Elizabeth instigated. Before that, it was always men. And in the early days, it was really kind of a military thing, like a band of men that were proven and tested and would stand together. Okay, today, it also used to always be aristocracy, but that's changed too. Now, the knights and the ladies are chosen from a variety of backgrounds, and it's really shifted to where it's more a recognition for public service. Those who've extraordinarily served the nation or the monarch personally. And the Queen, or now the King, is sovereign of the Garter. Okay. I thought it was cool that the knights are actually called companions. The monarch appoints them, and they have 5 officers. New members are invested by the monarch in the throne room 1 day a year, and it's an appointment for life. We kind of were looking at it thinking, is it Freemasonry or what is it? Anyways, apparently, the Order of the Garter, it's an order of chivalry. It's the highest in the land under St. John's Cross or whatever. Anyway, Freemasonry is a social fraternity and there is no connection. The Knights of the Garter are really like the inner sanctum for the monarch. They're the elite of the elite. The Order of St. John, Jerusalem. They're the ones who are closest to them, who they can share secrets of the state with, receive advice from. And of course, over the years, that's shifted too, but that was the original thing. Now, that really struck my attention because when we started Kingsgate, we very much used the picture of Arthur and the Round Table because we were believing God to instigate the 5-fold flat leadership where everyone's equal, there's no head, we're talking a round table, and everybody needed, if you wanted to be part of it, is to take your sword and lay it down for the common good, that we would be a team, not individual, God being head. So I thought, wow, that sounds familiar. The St. George is the patron saint, I guess, of England, but also over this order. And their spiritual home is St. George's Chapel in Windsor. But it's also quite cool that St. George is the dragon slayer, right? I thought that was good. So, why am I sharing that? there are 24 knights or ladies. There are 24 elders around the throne who cast their crowns down before the Lord. As humans, we have 24 ribs that surround and protect our heart, where the King of Kings wants to be enthroned. There are 5 officers. God has given to his church the 5-fold ministers. He wants to lead and equip his body, his church. Knights are called companions. Isn't that good? Jesus doesn't just call us servants. He calls us friends. He wants to be in the battle with us. He wants us to be in the battle with him. Knights, yeah. It's about relationship, right? Based on trusted, proven, loyal friends. I don't know about you, but that's what I want. So what is a garter? It's a band worn on the leg to keep a sock or a stocking up. There's a band on the arm to keep a sleeve up. It also officially is the badge or the membership of the Order of the Garter. Now, there's a lot of discrepancy. There's about 3 different stories how that came into being, why the Garter, and they're actually quite interesting. I won't get into all that. But their actual garter is blue, or it's blue and gold, which to me just speaks revelation and glory. I also couldn't help but notice a garter is circular, right? It's like a ring. There is no end. They're appointed for life. It's an eternal covenant that we're called into. Those knights are given like a personal crest and sword and helmet and shield, all of which their crest goes in the thing. And at their death, it goes back to the sovereign, and then a new person is chosen and instigated in the throne room. So it's quite fascinating, really. When someone is invested, that's what they're saying is one of the highlighted, they make a vow before God and they kneel before the sovereign. Who, if they're a man, she pins the garter on the knee. If it's a woman, it's on an elbow. And I thought that was fascinating too. Because we all need to bow and kneel before the Father. And because he actually wants us to walk on his arm. Like the beloved in Song of Solomon's. Unless a seed falls to the ground and dies, there remains only a single seed. If it dies, it produces many. God save the King. All hail King Jesus. He's coming again. Oh Lord, thank you. Thank you for the depth of the call. Thank you for the power that you want to invest in us. Thank you that you would trust us with anything. Thank you that our righteousness, that our ability, it all comes from you. Thank you that it's just about positioning. All we got to do is hear and obey. And you do that. You'll do that in each one of us. Thank you for the paths that each one have come down already. How you've instructed, how you've been training, how you've invested, how you've chosen, how you've called. Lord, I pray none of it be lost, but you just keep weaving together the beautiful picture. I actually asked them to sing that song as well. Oh, hail King Jesus. And we got our eyes off any person, and we just see him again in his glory, in his splendor. He was here in the beginning. He was so moved by your worship. He is awesome. No one compares to him. Oh, in terms of the garter too, that was another thing that I thought. What does it say about Jesus? In Revelation 19:16, what is written on his thigh? I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. And he had a name written that no man knew but he himself. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. And out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations. And he hath on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Hallelujah.